Thank you very much for the invitation to speak at your event. As Bridget has just said, I've been in food and beverage in the hospitality industry all my working life. I probably started at 15. I won't tell you how old I am, but you can probably guess by the grey hair. I've been in food and beverage tech for probably 32 years now, both on the sort of customer side where I worked in hotels in central London as a food and beverage manager, and at the advent of when technology started to appear in hotels, and then latterly for the last 28 years in Oracle via an acquisition of, some of you might have heard of it, Microsystems, where I sort of ran the global strategic accounts team working with such brands as Starbucks, Burger King, KFC, lots of hotel chains around the world. So I thought I'd sort of give in the 15 minutes that I have today is a little bit of a history lesson of where technology has come. And Michael alluded to it. Is, Michael stated that can tech replace hospitality? And he hit the nail on the head where he says technology is an enabler. And throughout my whole sort of career on both sides of the fence, technology has been there to help operators, consumers, staff to just become more efficient. But when you actually go back in time and you look at, if we just focus really on point of sale, actually the first point of sale system in the 1800s, in 1883, it was about control. And when Patterson and Ritty first built the cash register, for which later then became NCR, it was about how can you control what your employees are doing? How can you make sure that they're not stealing from you? And what's really interesting, if you ever sort of, as sad as I probably am, look at the history of point of sale, the first selling technique for a point of sale register was, do you know what your employee's doing in the business? And it's amazing where we sort of fast forward 140 years, where technology now is at a stage where it has to change again, because it has to be used to appeal to the digital natives. And if you go through time and you look at some of the pictures here, in 1906, the first sort of credit system was put on a point of sale system. In the UK, in the early 70s, when decimalisation came about, people couldn't do the calculation between pounds, shillings and pence to the decimalisation of pounds and pence. So a cash register system was invented to help people understand how to compute. When I first started in Micros in 1994, technology was just starting to appear in hotels. It had gone from like the AS400s to a desktop PC. Windows still wasn't out. We had 3.11. People started playing around with Windows programs. And over my 30 years in the industry, technology has gone in waves where at some point it becomes really loyalty becomes the next big thing, then mobile ordering becomes the next big thing, delivery is the biggest fad, and we are an industry that is driven by fads and the next big thing to overcome a business challenge. But underneath all that, we have to make technology work, and work for not only our customers but also our staff. And we're really entering an interesting phase in my opinion. And Michael alluded to it again in his presentation about how do we recruit team members? How do we attract them? How do we get people to want to come and work for them? The biggest challenge that we've faced in the UK, and I think it's globally as well, is after COVID, actually getting people to come back and work in our industry, because they've realized that you can go and work in other industries and not have unsociable hours, probably get more money, be valued more. So the industry has a challenge at the moment of how do they attract the best talent. And it's interesting speaking to operators globally, whether it's in America or Australia or wherever, is they're really starting to change not only how technology needs to work for them, but also their employees, but how their operations are changing, where we can just recruit probably less team members, but have the best team members. And, you know, a good example of that is a restaurant chain in Washington State in North America, fine dine restaurant, very high standard, used to be open pre-pandemic, breakfast, lunch and dinner, 7 days a week, lots of staff issues, lots of stress. Post-pandemic, only open lunch and dinner 5 days a week. Business actually makes more money, keeping the A1 staff. Staff are happy, staff are earning more money on tips. And it's been interesting where the pandemic has made us probably reset and rethink the industry. But there's lots of things that are not going to go away. And if you look at technology, if you look at how technology has evolved and this is a restaurant example, no particular brand, is we used to think of point of sale as just a till at a counter. And now point of sale is about acquisition. And it's less about point of sale and it's more about point of service. And that point of service can be on the premise, off the premise. And when you see some of the technology coming down the track, whether it's voice enabled Tesla cars, you know, ordering your drive-through as you drive up the motorway, whether it's voice connected order confirmation boards in drive-through windows. When we look at, we do a lot of work with architects who are designing the next hotel, the next restaurant, how the front of house is becoming smaller, but the back of house is becoming bigger because it's all about production. So how can technology help people with production to produce food more accurately, have more prep done, more mise en place done, so that you can meet both an on and off premise business in a dynamic way. And this is creating lots of challenges for operators, because as technologists, we can design everything for anyone. We can build things, we can use all the modern tools out there, whether it's AI, whether it's voice, whether it's predictive analytics, whether it's robotics, or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, we've got to have people that can use it, can learn it. And one phrase that we use a lot is, how do we make our employees profitable more quickly? We focus a lot in the industry on great customer service, great loyalty, but we also want our people that run our bars, run our restaurants, run our front desks to actually get up to speed really quickly. And we can design technology to the most fantastic solutions in the world, but if people can't use them, then it's pointless. So the big challenge that we all face, whether you're a technologist, whether you're an operator, whether you're a customer, or it doesn't matter whether you're an employee, is how can technology work for me? And I think we're entering an era now where we're really looking at how technology is going to evolve, whether it is in a kitchen with kitchen management systems, whether it is in the front desk and how can people check in, and how can we have a mobile waiter in the pocket, or how can we get rid of reception desks? You know, Citizen M was always the sort of forefront of having a kiosk as you check in, whether it's Schiphol or London or wherever. But it's interesting when you draw parallels to like a kitchen. People thought about in quick service, when they removed the counterpoints, that would have less staff. They would need less staff. They didn't have to have such a wage bill because you're opening kiosks, you're opening voice ordering. It doesn't actually work like that in industry, because you're just actually moving the labor. So as you get more points of acquisition, so whether it's a delivery company, whether it's a kiosk, whether it's mobile, whether it's voice, whether it's in-store, whatever acquisition channel you're using, you're going to need to have more people in the back of house. And that's where we're seeing kitchens becoming bigger, because we need to meet the demands, to meet the customer expectations. Because unfortunately, we live in a present society where if we order something, we expect it to be 15 minutes. If we order room service, we want it to be delivered very quickly. If we go into a restaurant, we want our food on the table really quickly. If the delivery company say they're going to deliver to us at 12 o'clock, we expect them to be there at 12 o'clock. That puts an enormous amount of pressure on our workforce to be able to meet those demands. You know, and there's a challenge in the industry at the moment with the sort of explosion and maybe retrenchment of delivery companies. And when we look at how restaurants are offering off-premise ordering, whether it's through delivery, whether it's through collection, but if we focus in on the delivery at the moment, who comes first? The people that are sat in your front of house in your restaurant, or the delivery driver at the back of house waiting to deliver the meal? And there's this real conundrum in the industry at the moment about how do we offer a solution that maintains both those areas? How do we maintain consistency on all our multi-channel operations? How do we maintain timings so that the driver isn't waiting and gives you a bad rating so you fall down the search listings? But at the same time, if we've got an on-premise business, how can we give a great customer experience to our on-premise customers as well as our off-premise customers? So this is a real conundrum that's going on, and that heaps loads of pressure on not just our reception staff, our waiting staff, but more importantly on our kitchen staff, as how can they meet the demands of both areas? You know, because they don't want to be faced with a driver or a delivery driver or anyone at the back of the kitchen waiting for their meal, getting really frustrated. They want the driver to appear when it's ready, packaged, boxed, so that they can just put it straight in the bag and off they go. So these are some of the challenges that we're facing. And when you look at the next generation, and you know, Michael set me up for this, and I have to thank him for that, with the POS in the pocket, or the point of service in the pocket. I think we're facing a challenge in the industry in terms of the people that are coming to work for us now are all digital natives. I remember back in about 1996, we released the first touchscreen point of sale system globally. And it was really interesting at that time when, you know, I was an installer, trainer, going out to hotels and really explaining to people that had never ever used a touchscreen technology before. You know, mobile phones at that time weren't even invented. The first mobile phone I had was a Motorola brick that we used to do support on with a pager, and mobile phones were far off. So when we first released a touchscreen where people could press, you know, what we see as pretty basic now, is actually getting them used and getting the older generation at that time. And I always remember installing in a hotel in the north of England where somebody was panicked because they were looking at a touchscreen that had a load of menu items on there to place an order that went into the kitchen. And every time she put the order through the till, she had to walk to the kitchen to make sure that it printed, because she had no confidence in the technology. When you fast forward to today, and you know, I have a daughter who's 20 who works in a local, she's a university student and works in a local bar. The first thing she says to me is not that, oh, how do I use this touchscreen? She says to me, and it's a competitor to ours, and that's irrelevant, but it's the same, is why are the user interfaces so unintuitive? Why are they so difficult to use? Why are they not friendly to people from my generation, Dad? You know, what are you doing to improve how the devices work for me? And it's really interesting when you talk to that sort of, she's 20, and you talk to their other employees, is how do we really reimagine how the next generation of staff that are going to come through to our work in our establishments or use our technology, the user interfaces that they want to use? Because we can sit in development teams, we can sit in UI teams, we can really think about, you know, what do we need to create? But unless we talk to the people that are going to use it, how does that need to work? And it's not just necessarily about the point of sale or putting in a bar item or putting in a restaurant item, but how can it work for her in the business, before she goes to the business, during the business? And when you start to think about things that we're looking at nowadays, that we want to give tools, whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's a tablet, whatever it might be, whatever comes next, is how can we give a suite of tools to an employee that's going to work in our business that not just covers point of service, but maybe how can they pick their shifts? How can, as an operator, we offer premium shifts like the gig economy? How can they pick their own rota on shifts that are available? How can they draw down their salary on the day that they work the shift? How can they message? How can it become a learning management system? And importantly, how can it become a point of sale? So wrapping up, because I know Bridget's just come online with the clock in my 1 minute, is I think we have to really think about technology working for the next generation of employee, but actually sit in their shoes and think about what they want to do with the technology. Think about how they're going to use it. And where there's been a lot of industry analysis on what the consumer wants and what the operator wants and the control and the points of service, the next generation of applications will be thinking through the eyes and the lens of our employees about how do they want to work with technology and how is it going to help them. So for everybody on this call, whether you're a student, a vendor, a hotelier, a restaurateur, put yourself in your staff's shoes and go and work a shift and think about what technology needs to do to help them work and be an enabler. And don't do it from your office or sat in a remote location. And on that point, I think I've got 30 seconds, Bridget. So I hope that was a little bit of interest. I'm on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to reach out to me, connect with me. Unfortunately, I have to leave for a customer meeting, but I'm more than happy to answer questions on LinkedIn or via the university. And Bridget and team, thank you very much for the invite. It's always great to put something back to the industry and to students.